I'll be honest. I think that we have got to make the restoration of the moral and material foundations of the marriage-based family the #1 priority of this nation's life. Nothing is more important. Not the budget, not the deficit, not the taxes, not the power of the federal government or the state government. We will rebuild our families or we will perish, and you know it. Now that doesn't mean, and don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean we don't care about these other issues. Because when you think it through, if you want to rebuild families, then you'd better start by rebuilding the material resource base of the family. And that means you've got to reclaim control of the money and the income from the government. That means you've got to abolish the income tax, get a retail sales tax in place that puts people back in control of their income. Make the paycheck the pay. Make the income the income. Make our decisions the decisions that count first before the government gets its share, and maybe we'll reclaim our material authority. It also means that when you look at welfare, I'm listening to all these folks, liberals, conservatives, Republicans, Democrats, all saying the same thing about welfare. Put those welfare people to work. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, but most of those welfare people are mothers. Have you realized yet that the only people who should be happy with the wholesale agenda of putting unwed mothers to work are the feminists who believe in the destruction of the family? Before we concentrate on putting them to work, let's put the work in the right context, in the context of marriage-based families where children are supposed to be reared. Make marriage the #1 objective, and in that context work. And if we're going to achieve that objective, then we better not rely on the bureaucrats, because I don't think bureaucrats make good matchmakers, do you? And I don't believe either with all those people who throw up their hands and act as if you can't force people to get married. What's the matter with us as a society? What has gone wrong with this country? Do you know, every civilization is built on some basics. Just like as adult human beings, we better not forget the things we learned when we were 2 or 3, like potty training and such. Well, there are 2 very basic things that are the equivalent morally of potty training for a society. And that is getting your younger children to avoid fornication and getting your older children to marry when they want to have children. Those are 2 real basic things. And if we've forgotten how to do it, we're in serious trouble. But I don't think we have. I don't think we have. I think that there are many people right here in this audience, there are many churches, there are many institutions of faith who know how to do it, who know how to draw people into moralizing relationships, who know how to give them counsel and guidance and prayer and support so that they can find decent partners and be decent husbands and wives and fathers and mothers. I think it's time we reclaim that responsibility from the government. Take back the helping programs, take back the charity programs, put them back in the hands of the non-government, faith-based institutions where they belong so we can get on with the job. And finally, how are we going to do it if we continue to allow a government-dominated education system to take us down the brainwashed road toward a day when our children won't even know what the Declaration of Independence is all about? We've got to reclaim the government's role in education as well, because it shouldn't be a government-led endeavor. We shouldn't let them treat our children as if they belong to government. Our children belong to God, and we as parents are responsible to Him for them, before the government, before anybody else. And if we're to find our way back to clear moral health and foundations, I think we're going to have to confront, first and foremost, those issues that epitomize the corrupt and licentious concept of freedom that you and I both know is destroying this country. At Republican gatherings and other gatherings around the country, I guess I tend to be now the one who shows up. Nobody really wants him around. He's going to ruin our lunch again. There he goes, messing with dinner. Because I feel that it is absolutely hypocritical to go charging off up the hill against the fictional violence of Hollywood and to go charging out and say, well, you know my record, you know where I stand. No. Because you see, the number one thing we've got to get done right now is not figuring out where some politician stands on the issue. Leadership in this country right now involves standing up and forthrightly and persuasively presenting to the American people the case of conscience for those things we know to be right. That's what we have to do on the abortion issue. Not run away with it, not play with it, because if we don't face it forthrightly, we will never get back to the principles that have made this country strong and great. How can we put into the hands of women the right to determine whether their children are human or not for purposes of abortion, when our great founding document says quite clearly that that's a determination was made by God Almighty long before we got here, and we have a choice? As I put it to Wolf Blitzer the other day, he said, well, how can you, a man, come here and pretend to dictate the choice of women? I'm not dictating anybody's choice. I am not saying this. The Declaration says it. And the Declaration says that it was God's choice made us human and God's choice that gave us rights. And between God's choice and the woman's choice, I know where I stand. I know where we must stand as a nation. And finally, I know I'm coming in for some criticism because because am I bringing religion into politics, do you think? Am I crossing that wall, so-called, of separation between church and state? They tell me that this is terrible. There are people who believe that you can't be a preacher in politics. This is all awful. We've got to concentrate on other things. What country are they living in? This is a nation that was built on certain moral premises. The main premise is very simple. Our rights come from God. Now, will somebody tell me, explain to me, if we deny God's existence and reject his authority, what happens to our claim to be respected in our human rights? I don't believe it can stand, because like everything else in this universe, but mostly like those things attested to by our great Declaration, our rights, our sense of justice, our sense of principle cannot stand except on the solid foundation of God's creative power and God's authority. That's what they said in the beginning. There is no substitute for it. That is our politics. That is our American creed. And I say nothing and do nothing that is not consistent with it in every iota. So tell me something. If that's the case, how come we're sitting back, shamefaced, trying to explain why it is that we bring our deep convictions into political life? As we are good Christians, so we are good Americans, and we bring our Christian principles to a table that is wrought in the image of those Christian principles. Politics is where we belong, because in America, politics is founded on the solid foundation of God Almighty.